Well, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time it is in your area. Today I'm going to share some things that my store and many other stores will not buy. So before you go to your local music store to sell something, you might want to check, what you have before you actually make your way over to their shop. So here are 8 or more things that we will not buy anymore. And there are some exceptions to the rule, as always, when we will buy them. So let's go over those 8 things right now. Remember, if you find this video informative or helpful at any point, please hit the like and subscribe button and help the channel grow. All right, now it's showtime. Number 1, and these are not in any particular order or anything. I'm just going to kind of go down the list and tell you what I have here. So number 1 is pickups. And these aren't just all pickups. This is just mainly like the noiseless type pickups that, like EMG and stuff like that. I'm going to say that, with a grain of salt, because an EMG has, its purpose. I mean, they're great, metal pickup. A lot of guys that play a lot of the dirtier stuff like to use EMGs. And they're mainly the ones that do use them. I used them a long time ago, back in the heyday of the hairband stuff, but I haven't used them since. And I know that I don't see them as much with some of the guitars. They're not on like as many guitars that there were just 15 years ago. So EMGs is one of them. Probably the DiMarzio, Area 51s. Aren't quite as popular as they used to be. But if you bring in a passive pickup, possibly from the 50s or 60s or something like that, that's always something we're going to consider buying. So keep that in mind when you go to your local music store. If you got an older pickup, they probably are going to buy it. I know we will. So here's a sad one. I say that it is sad, but it's not. 412 cabinets. That's right, Marshall 412 cabinets, Crate 412 cabinets, PV 412 cabinets, Laney, whatever, you name it. 412 cabinets, the Bogner 412 cabinets. Kind of a thing of the past. Yeah, it's hard to say that, but it is being quickly replaced by 212 cabinets, 112 cabinets. Things are getting smaller and smaller. And, when a guy rolls through the door here with a 412 cabinet, I just shake my head. It's like, no, that's not gonna happen. There are places that will buy them, if they're older. Once again, this older thing comes into play. Now, if you've got a 60s, Marshall cabinet, more than likely, we're going to buy it or somebody else is going to buy it. Even early 70s. We might actually buy that as well. Something that's got greenbacks in it, we're going to look at it and go, might want to buy that. All depending on how much you want for it. Now, a lot of people will look on Reverb, and Reverb is not a price guide by all means. But, people see these things on Reverb and they say, oh, this guy's asking this. Remember, that's asking, that's not selling. So you go on that price, you walk into a place like mine and you got a 412 cabinet from 1968 and you want $10,000 for it. It's not gonna happen. Okay, here's one that's kind of on the line. 212 amps. Now, naturally, if you got a 212, a 410, or something like that, these are bigger amps. Things are getting smaller and smaller by the day, just like the 412 cabinet. They just don't make sense anymore. I mean, they're great sounding, but they just are kind of a thing of the past. You walk into a gig with a 212 cabinet or 212 amp and it's heavy. You've got to wheel it in. If the gig is really far away, a load in, it's a pain in the butt. Unless you're, if you're 20 or 20, in your 20s and you're in great shape, sure, go ahead and do it. But most people, especially if you're older, getting into your older age, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, whatever, and plus, you're probably not going to wheel a 212, 410, and a 610 or whatever, y'all know what I'm talking about there. But you're probably not going to, wheel in one of those. You're probably going to go to a 112, and that's probably the biggest you're going to probably want to carry. Most people now are kind of really looking at the digital world. Most are looking at the Quad Cortex, the Kempers, the Tone X, the Head Rush, the Fender, all the new stuff that's digital, and looking at it, because it's realistic. I mean, they are great sounding. I mean, I've been using Quad Cortex for the last 2 years, a year and a half. I don't know how long it's been, but been using that. I used a Kemper since 2013, I think. It might have been 11. I don't remember. I've had it for a while. I don't know. But I used the Kemper forever, mainly because I got in a car wreck and couldn't carry anything anymore. It was just, wasn't feasible for me to pick up stuff and kill myself. So that's why the 212s and beyond amps are kind of getting pushed aside, because these digital modelers are just, the Helix is another one. The Fractal, the FM8 or FX8, a great unit, but, they're kind of a thing that's kind of taken over the world of amps. Why would you wheel in, a 412 cabinet with a head when you can walk on stage, take a Quad Cortex that's this big, stick it on your stage, and you've got that tone, or pretty close to that tone. So that's why the amp is becoming a thing of the past, unfortunately. Here's one you'll probably laugh about, but it's true. Esteban guitars. Yeah, Esteban guitars. If you don't know what Esteban guitars are, they were a guitar that were sold on the TV channel QVC. They had this guy, Esteban, demo these guitars and claim these guitars were better than a Martin. Yeah. I don't know what you're smoking, dude, but yeah, that's not true. But they sold a lot of these guitars. They actually sold those. They actually sold the Randy Jackson guitar and the Keith Urban. All three of these guitars here on QVC were pretty much garbage. They're not good guitars. I hate to tell you that, but they're not good guitars. And when you walk through the door in most music stores, you're not going to sell that guitar. You're either not going to sell the guitar or you're not going to get a whole lot of money for it. I mean, a little bit of money, and that's it, a little. I mean, you're better off, if you've got an Esteban guitar and you're trying to sell it, stick it in a garage sale. Take it to a thrift store. Donate it to somebody. Donate it to a kid that is trying to learn. Give it to them, or a vet, or somebody like that. If they're still playable. I mean, I just had one come in that they wanted it to be set up, and this thing already needed a neck reset. And they said, whoa, it's only a couple years old. Well, unfortunately, that's the truth of those guitars. They weren't made very well. They weren't very expensive in the first place. I mean, $250, $300, something like that. So they weren't very good guitars. And that's mostly acoustic guitars. The electric Keith Urbans, I think, they're okay. They're okay, but those Esteban, not very good. Next on the list is power amps. Now, what I'm talking about power amps, I'm talking about most of the time these big bulky amps that, were in the 80s and the 90s. The QS, or not QS, well, QSCs were one of them, but the 800s by PV. These things were huge. They were built to last. Now, PV, I have to say that they made a great power amp back in the day to last. They weren't the perfect sounding amp, but they sounded good. But there were many other amps out there that sounded better. But as far as durability goes, those old CS800s that PV made back in the day, oh my gosh, those things were indestructible. I actually know a guy that actually dropped one off the side of a boat by accident during a gig on there. I don't know how he did it, but he said he dropped it off the side. The amp went in the shallow water. They were able to recover it, pull it back out, and they let it dry out, and it still worked. So, these things were just indestructible. Hey, I can actually tell you this. We had one in a fire. Somebody set our van on fire. We were playing this place up in Orlando years and years ago, and it's not even there anymore. But they set our van on fire. I don't know why, but I guess they didn't like the band very much. But they set the van on fire, and a CS800 was in there, and also a PV Mark 16, which is a console, 16-channel console. They both burned up in that fire. They both worked after the fire. Yeah, that's what's crazy. They both still worked. They got hot, they were on fire, the whole 9 yards, and they smelled like crud, but they worked. But if you bring one of those into our shop or somebody else's shop, more than likely they're not going to buy it. You've got PA speakers now that are powered. They have just as much power or more than most of those power amps. Why would you want to carry a rack out with all these power amps? There are exceptions to this rule. If you're a major company, and you're doing major setups in some of these arenas and stuff, sure, you're going to use this stuff. But for the most part, Jono and all these other guys right here that are, playing clubs and stuff, they're not going to do that anymore. They're going to want a powered speaker, set it up, put it on the stage, and done. So the average music store is not going to buy power amps anymore. So if you got power amps sitting around, good luck trying to sell them. And that goes for guys use them as for their their preamps and that's another thing as well. Preamps. That's another thing we won't buy anymore. The old preamps, they're obsolete pretty much. Guys will probably say, "Oh no, they sound great." If you got to get that Eddie tone, you got to have that. Once again, that amp modeler thing kind of takes care of that, doesn't it? And speaking of the amp modeler thing, or not the amp modeler, but the rack gear. There's all kinds of rack gear that we will just not buy. Rack gear is pretty much, once again, obsolete. You got a Rev 7 or something like that from Yamaha. Am I gonna buy it? No, I'm probably not gonna buy it. All that stuff, a lot of that stuff was great stuff, but rack gear is another thing we just won't buy. Rack EQs, all that stuff. I'm sure there are some people that kind of hold on to that stuff, but as far as us, we're definitely not buying. But there are probably some backline companies that will buy it, but not us. If you walk in here with something that's from a rack, no, we're gonna tell you, yeah, try something else. Next on the list is lights. Can lights. Not LED, but can lights. These were the lights that everybody used through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, into the early 2000s. Bands were still using can lights. And, studios for, lighting were using them as well. I personally like the way the can lights look opposed to the LED lights. Now, you can buy can lights with LEDs in them, but I'm talking about the ones that actually had the PAR 36s, the 56, the 64s, all that stuff. The actual bulbs, the big old bulbs that fit in these things, or even the smaller bulbs that went inside. But that's something that's obsolete. I mean, I can physically tell you I had a lot. I'm not going to say how many, but a lot of lights that we used when I was on the road. I took those lights, I tried to sell them any way I could. Nobody wanted them. Nobody. I think I did sell one to a photo place that wanted one, and I sold it for $5. $5. Most of them went to the curb. They sat out in front of my house until the garbage man came and picked them, and off they went. So unfortunately, can lights is a thing that nobody wants. Those light consoles that you would run off a mic cable, that's another one. I won't buy those as well. I know a lot of people won't buy them as well because they went out of the mic cable, they plugged into their dimmer pack, and the dimmer packs with the mic cable, once again, kind of a thing that's a thing of the past. The LED, the DMX, all that stuff has kind of taken the place of that and made that obsolete. Obsolete. Somebody will get that reference I just did, that with the obsolete. Delete. No, we're not deleting it. So, anyways, let's talk about the next one. All right, the next on the list is old solid state amps. Yeah, the old solid state amps, not all of them. Now, I'm not talking back in the 60s, because some of those amps were kind of cool. Some people will buy them. I don't generally buy them myself, but some people will buy them. But for the most part, solid state amps from the 70s, the 80s, and stuff like that. Now, the newer stuff, sure, that's fine. And some of the 80s stuff is all right. There's some of those crate amps that, and Randall amps or solid state. Sure, you're going to buy that type of stuff. They have a certain tone. The crate amps, I don't buy anymore because they're not reliable. I've had several of those come in and they work for a while and then they die. And a lot of repair guys just won't repair them. They don't want to have anything to do with them. You can't get the parts for them, or I don't know. I'm not really sure what. I know several of my repair guys that they just, no, they don't. If it's not a tube amp, they don't want to fix it. So it's making it harder and harder to get them replaced or repaired, whatever. So we won't buy them anymore. No more. No more solid state amps, even though some of them are cool. I mean, I've got a little Ampeg amp over here that is cool, but nobody wants it. So if you bring one of those solid state amps into me from that time period, the 70s, 80s, 80s, like I said, there are exceptions to that rule. But most of the time, 98% of the time, I'm gonna say no. Here's a couple bonus ones here that I'm gonna throw on the list here for you. And that is PA equipment. Yeah, I'm talking about PA speakers. And I've kind of touched on that a little bit. Nobody wants anything that's not powered. If you got an old passive speaker, from whatever company, you're gonna have a hard time getting rid of it. A lot of people, they just do not want to buy anything that's passive. It's really tough to sell a passive speaker or a passive monitor, something like that. If it's not powered, people just don't want it anymore. It's a dying breed. So I can actually, that's another thing, I have stuck by the curb and let it go away. Yeah, I've had the garbage people pick them up, take them away. I know people are like, oh, you're crazy. Well, can't sell it. Makes no sense to me. So the other thing is electronic drums. The early editions of electronic drums. This doesn't count with Simmons drums and stuff like that, because those, the very early ones, are still collectible. But there's, you know, the TD4s and stuff like that. You can sell them if you're in a true drum shop. But I mean, I know several shops that will not buy them. They just will not buy electronic drums at the early editions that have, you know, don't have mesh heads. You know, they're rubber heads and stuff. They just don't want them. So that was my last one there. So I hope this helped you a little bit to kind of understand the mentality of a music store, guitar shop, whatever. That's kind of the way we look at things. You know, we can't buy everything. And a lot of people think, you know, that they can take anything to a music store and sell it, but we just don't buy everything anymore. It's not feasible for us to buy everything. So just keep that in mind when you've got your gear, you know, sitting there and you say, I'll just take it out, you know, over to, you know, Chad's Music and have them buy this stuff. Maybe Chad's not buying that stuff that week, you know, maybe he's just not ever buying that stuff. So, kind of times, 9 out of 10 times, it's a better call when you got something that's on this list. Call before you go over there and ask your local dealer, do you guys buy this stuff? So, anyways, all right, guys. I hope this helped you out. Until next time, please hit the like and subscribe button and become part of the channel and help us grow. So anyways, all right. I'll see you next time. Have a great one. Keep rocking. From the Guitar Addict, I'm out.